My name is Kelsey, and I'm 31. The email hit my inbox on a frigid Tuesday morning, stripped of warmth or sentiment, like a corporate memo that had forgotten the human side entirely. It was from my father, Kenneth. The subject line read simply, "Winery Access." The body was even colder. "All locks have been changed. Financial codes updated. You no longer have permission." No, dear Kelsey, no sign of love or concern, just a bureaucratic execution disguised as an email. I read it twice. My fingers didn't tremble. I breathed in slowly, letting the chill fill my lungs, and typed a 9-word reply. Noted. Thank you for informing me. It wasn't the end. It was only the visible tip of a long, slow collapse. The real story began years earlier, with a phone call that should have never come. It was my father on the line. His voice lacked its usual thunder. Instead, it was thin, anxious, and teetering on panic. "Kelsey, we have a problem," he said. "A serious one." I worked as a financial analyst, a numbers person in a family that worshipped appearances. My brother Tyler was the heir apparent, the golden child. Despite barely scraping a college degree in marketing, he had been handed the keys to our family's Napa Valley winery, a legacy built over generations, and now he was running it into the ground. Kenneth spoke in hushed tones, each word tremulous. Bad investments. Overspending on unnecessary expansions. Vendors unpaid. Foreclosure notices sent. The family brand, our name, the winery itself, everything was teetering on collapse. "I can't go to the banks, Kelsey. It will ruin us, ruin our name. I need you," he said, his voice breaking. Me? The practical daughter. The one whose career was steady but unspectacular. The one whose value in the family had always been measured in competence, not charm. He wanted me to step in, but secretly. Tyler could never know he had failed. And the public, the Napa community, must remain unaware of our troubles. "You can be an anonymous investor," he suggested, "a silent partner to keep us afloat." The words echoed in my apartment, modest and rented, far from the grandeur of the winery. I wasn't an angel. I was someone desperate to prove herself worthy of recognition. And yet, I said yes. I agreed to transfer $6,500 every month to the account Kenneth set up, a lifeline disguised as an operating loan. 4 years of consistent payments. 4 years of meticulous spreadsheets, forecasts, and expense projections. I put off buying a home, downgraded my car, and told myself I was saving not just a business, but a legacy. I was invisible, yet indispensable. My identity wasn't personal. It was transactional. My love for them was measured in wires, and my sacrifice a ledger. But angels, I learned, aren't meant to be employed. They aren't supposed to be acknowledged or worse, mocked. The subtle jabs began quietly. Tyler dismissed my spreadsheets as cute, my suggestions as irrelevant. I was excluded from meetings, blindsided by press releases announcing purchases made with my money. My father offered faint reassurances. "Don't rock the boat, Kelsey. Tyler knows what he's doing. Soon you'll be a partner." The illusion held for a while, but cracks widened. The breaking point wasn't dramatic. It was mundane. One Tuesday evening, I was reviewing my personal accounts, the $6,500 transfer looming as usual. An email appeared from my mother, Stephanie. The subject line confused me. FUD investor luncheon plans. No one had mentioned a luncheon. Opening it, I scrolled through a forwarded chain. Tyler had written to my father. "The angel is asking questions again. About Q4 projections. Let's just use this money to get by. She doesn't need to be involved." And then my mother's forwarded reply froze my chest. "Kenneth, handle her. Appreciate her input, but don't invite her. This luncheon is for real investors, not her. Make sure the check's clear. She's a guest with a wallet, not a partner." Every sacrifice, every month of transferring money, every sleepless night compiling reports, gone. I wasn't family. I was a line of credit. The revelation brought clarity, not tears. No anger, no despair, just a resolute coldness. The angel was done. I didn't call my father or mother. I didn't confront Tyler. Instead, I created a document, a file titled The Steward's Ledger. Line by line, I compiled 4 years of wire transfers, expenses, ignored suggestions, and dismissive emails. $6,500 per month. $78,000 per year, $315,000 total. Every condescending message, every passive dismissal, every manipulated promise, recorded. The ledger was ammunition, not a weapon. The real leverage was understanding the structure they had overlooked. The winery, majestic and imposing, belonged to a holding company founded by my grandfather, Thomas. Kenneth, Stephanie, and Tyler were just managers. My grandfather, now 80, still held the single voting share. He was the true owner, the one with both vision and integrity. With everything compiled, I prepared. PDFs, screenshots, and spreadsheets at the ready, I called my grandfather. He answered on the second ring, steady as ever. "Kelsey, it's good to hear your voice," he said. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Grandfather, I need your proxy vote. I need control over the holding company. I can't explain everything now, but I promise you'll understand soon." There was a pause, a thoughtful silence as he processed the weight of my request. "It's time, isn't it?" he asked. "Yes, sir, it is." The legal paperwork was dispatched immediately. He didn't question motives, he simply trusted me. Trust. The one thing my parents and brother had never afforded. That brings us back to that Tuesday morning. The locks changed. The financial codes altered. The email designed to scare me. But I wasn't scared. I wasn't naive. I wasn't just a guest with a wallet. The steward's ledger was complete. The proxy vote secured. I was ready. And this time, the game had changed. The drive to Napa was quiet. 2 hours of controlled focus, rehearsing numbers and outcomes in my head. $315,000. 4 years of invisible labor. Every wire transfer, every spreadsheet, every ignored warning, it all added up. But I wasn't going there to dwell on betrayal. I was going there to execute precision. The winery's gates loomed as I arrived. Everything about the building spoke of prestige and legacy. Polished oak doors, manicured gardens, and a facade that promised perfection. Behind the elegance, however, lay dysfunction. And now I held the keys. I stepped into the investor luncheon, and the room's atmosphere shifted immediately. Conversations faltered mid-sentence. My father, Kenneth, was the first to notice me. His face went from confident to tight, almost cartoonishly red, as if every cell in his body suddenly realized the threat standing in the room. Tyler, ever the golden child, froze mid-smile, his carefully curated confidence evaporating in an instant. He looked at me as if I were an apparition. My mother, Stephanie, was mid-laugh with another investor's wife, and her smile faltered, turned brittle, awkward, forced. I wasn't uninvited, I was unanticipated, and that mattered. I took a seat at a vacant table in the back, calm, collected, unassuming. The polite chatter didn't resume. Instead, a ripple of curiosity coursed through the room. The senior investors had arrived expecting another routine luncheon, another display of the family brand's supposed competence. Instead, they now had a new variable, me. Kenneth began his speech, projecting strength and legacy, attempting to recapture control of the room. He spoke of perseverance, growth, and the family name, but the words felt hollow, even to him. Tyler followed, presenting slides of meaningless projections, marketing jargon, and optimism divorced from reality. His audience applauded politely, unaware that the foundation beneath him was already crumbling. Then he raised his glass, beaming with smug satisfaction. "A toast," he announced, "to our anonymous angel investor. Without her, none of this would have been possible. Your belief in us made all the difference." The laughter was faint, polite, and completely oblivious to the truth. I waited, letting the applause subside. The moment was mine. I stood. The room fell silent. Eyes shifted, first from Kenneth, then Tyler, then my mother, and finally to the crowd of investors who had come to witness business acumen, not family drama. I walked to the podium, each step deliberate. My heels clicked sharply on the polished stone floor. I looked directly at Tyler. His expression oscillated between disbelief and panic, like a golden retriever staring at an algebra problem. "Thank you, Tyler," I said. My voice carried, crisp and controlled. "I appreciate your recognition of my naive belief. But let me clarify something. It was never belief. It was an investment." From my briefcase, I retrieved my laptop and opened it, connecting it to the projector. The screen flickered to life, displaying the title page of my steward's ledger. 4 years, I said, letting the words sink in. $6,500 per month, every month. $315,000. Every single wire transfer I authorized, every expense I covered, every opportunity I presented that was ignored, documented here. I clicked to the next slide. Emails, PDFs, screenshots, passive-aggressive dismissals, lines of text where my contributions were minimized or mocked. The investor's polite nods turned into attentive silence. Kenneth looked like he might faint. Stephanie pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to hide a strangled gasp. Tyler paled visibly, his golden child aura replaced by sheer vulnerability. I was told my input was cute, I continued, projecting Tyler's exact words. I was told to stay out of strategy. I was told I was a guest with a wallet, not a partner. I advanced the slides to the email where my mother had explicitly instructed Kenneth to make sure the checks keep clearing, and emphasized, she's a guest with a wallet. The room was dead silent. Investors exchanged glances. Kenneth's face was a mixture of shock and anger, but there was nowhere for him to release it. Tyler's hands fidgeted with the edge of the table. My mother's shoulders shook with restrained panic. I stepped aside, letting the ledger speak for itself. Every transaction, every dismissive message, every ignored warning laid bare. This wasn't theatrics. It was irrefutable evidence of years of manipulation. Before the family could intervene, a quiet but commanding voice emerged from the back of the room. Thank you, Kelsey. I believe I can handle this from here. I turned. My grandfather, Thomas, had arrived an hour earlier, unnoticed. His presence commanded immediate attention, a natural authority that dwarfed any pretense of familial power. He walked to the podium, slow and deliberate, eyes fixed on the investors rather than the children who had squandered his trust. As the sole owner of this holding company, he said, his voice calm but echoing with absolute certainty, I am initiating a full forensic audit of the winery's finances immediately. He looked at Tyler, who was now nearly white as a sheet. It seems our angel investor has been funding not just operations but covering the consequences of poor management. And unfortunately, it appears there has been misappropriation of funds. Stephanie's restrained scream pierced the quiet. Kenneth stared, frozen, the weight of exposure dawning on him. Tyler's confident smile had evaporated completely. The golden child had been stripped of pretense in one precise surgical statement, investors whispered. Some nodded appreciatively. Others looked shocked, realizing that the family narrative they had been sold was, in reality, a facade maintained by Kelsey's unseen labor. I stepped back, letting the room process the ledger and the audit announcement. My role as the guest with a wallet was over. I wasn't just the silent savior anymore. I had become the catalyst, the reckoning, the one who reclaimed what was rightfully mine, and more importantly, what was rightfully the winery's. The boardroom, once a stage for illusion and performance, was now a chamber of truth. And for the first time, I felt the liberation of clarity. 4 years of invisible work, of being undervalued and dismissed, had culminated not in vengeance, but in justice. As the murmurs and shocked glances filled the room, I knew the final act was near. My family, the people who had undervalued me, had been stripped of their comfortable illusions. The next step would be decisive, and there was no turning back. The air in the room was thick with disbelief. Investors, who had come expecting a routine luncheon, now witnessed a complete unraveling of a family's curated image. My father's attempts at authority fell flat. Tyler's golden child act had been punctured. My mother's panic was transparent to anyone watching, and I, the so-called guest with a wallet, had become the pivot on which truth rotated. I closed the laptop, letting the last slide linger on the screen. A complete ledger of every payment, every ignored suggestion, every dismissive comment. The room absorbed the weight of 4 years of labor distilled into spreadsheets and PDFs. Silence stretched, heavy and anticipatory, until my grandfather, Thomas, took charge. This audit will determine the full scope of financial mismanagement, he said, his voice steady, unwavering. Tyler, Kenneth, the board will now operate under my oversight until further notice. Integrity must be restored before any decisions are made. Tyler stammered, searching for words but found none. His smirk, the one that had carried him through years of undeserved praise, was gone. Kenneth's jaw tightened, and Stephanie's tears fell freely, no longer masked by polite pretense. For a moment, I simply watched them. Not with hatred, not with vindictiveness, but with the cold clarity that had accompanied me since discovering the truth. 4 years of sacrifices, of hidden efforts, of invisibility had led to this point. I wasn't angry anymore. I was measured, precise, unshakable. I turned to the room, addressing the investors, the silent witnesses to the collapse of a fabricated legacy. This ledger is not about revenge, I said. It's about accountability. It's about proving that the strength of any organization or family does not come from appearances, but from integrity, transparency, and responsibility. Every eye was on me. Some were impressed, some shocked, all attentive. I felt the weight of years of invisibility lift. I had spent my life being practical, being overlooked, being a silent supporter. Now I was seen. Now I was acknowledged. Grandfather Thomas spoke again. Kelsey, as the executor of the audit and a steward of this legacy, I am granting you operational control. Your diligence, foresight, and loyalty, not blind allegiance but actual responsibility, deserve leadership. I nodded, absorbing the magnitude of his words. This was more than validation. It was a transfer of trust, authority, and respect. Not a gift, not a favor, but a recognition of competence and character. Tyler's expression shifted from confusion to fear as he realized the power dynamic had permanently changed. He had been the supposed heir, the face of the brand, yet he lacked the foundational skills and ethics necessary to hold it together. The same applied to my parents. They had managed appearances but had failed at accountability. I stepped forward and addressed them directly, my voice calm but authoritative. For 4 years, I funded, advised, and protected this winery while being dismissed, belittled, and excluded. That ends today. The company, the legacy, and the responsibilities are now in the hands of someone who values transparency over image. Kenneth's lips pressed into a thin line. Tyler's gaze avoided mine. Stephanie wiped her tears without meeting my eyes. They had been taught to perform for approval, but the performance was over. I turned to the investors and continued. You've seen the truth today. The numbers don't lie, and the ledger tells a story that has been ignored for too long. The winery will move forward, not on charisma or legacy, but on strategy, accountability, and sustainable growth. The murmurs in the room shifted from shock to cautious respect. The narrative had been rewritten in real time. Investors now understood the reality behind the brand's decline and the person who had silently prevented complete collapse. I knew my next steps had to be strategic. It wasn't enough to reveal the truth. I had to act decisively to stabilize operations. With my grandfather's support, I implemented immediate changes, full oversight of finances, real-time audits, and strict protocols for any expenditure. Tyler was stripped of executive decision-making power, and Kenneth was relegated to advisory capacity under supervision. Stephanie, overwhelmed by guilt and stress, voluntarily stepped back from management entirely. Over the following weeks, the winery transformed. Operational inefficiencies were corrected, debts renegotiated, and vendors paid. I rebuilt relationships that Tyler had neglected and cultivated transparency with investors. Slowly, the aura of dysfunction dissipated. What remained was a company grounded in ethics and competence, not appearances, but the personal victory was even more profound. For years, I had measured my worth through validation I never received. I had sacrificed, been dismissed, and underestimated. Yet in reclaiming the winery, I reclaimed myself. I was no longer a ghost in my own life, no longer a guest with a wallet. I was the steward, the decision-maker, the one whose vision mattered. The family, though shaken, began to adjust to their new reality. Kenneth and Tyler eventually understood that legacy is not inherited by default. It is earned through accountability and integrity. Stephanie, too, realized that love and pride are meaningless without respect for competence. They had been performers. Now they had been confronted with truth. In the quiet moments, I reflected on the journey. The money, the spreadsheets, the sleepless nights, none of it had been wasted. Each sacrifice had been a lesson in resilience and self-worth. I had been the unseen force keeping a legacy alive, and now I was its rightful custodian. The winery flourished, not only in profit but in reputation. Investors once skeptical became advocates. Employees, previously demoralized by mismanagement, now had confidence in leadership. And I felt the empowerment that comes from transforming injustice into opportunity. If there is one lesson in this, it is this: do not wait for permission to be recognized. Do not allow others' inability to see your worth to dictate your actions. Stand firm, compile your evidence, and take control of your narrative. You do not need approval to claim your seat at the table, or to reclaim it when it was never truly yours. I am Kelsey, and I am no longer invisible. I am the steward, the owner in practice if not by birth, and the guardian of a legacy that now reflects honesty, diligence, and integrity. And if anyone reading this has ever been made to feel like an outsider in their own life, remember this: you do not need their permission to be central in your own story. You are not a line of credit, not a silent enabler. You are the decision maker, the architect of your destiny, and the guardian of your worth. It's time to change the locks, draw the boundaries, and be your own angel.